The biggest problem everyone who's learning foreign languages faces is having conversations in the language they are learning, not to mention having conversations with native speakers. In our case, the language in question will be English. Some people are literally afraid to speak English. They are afraid of making mistakes, mispronouncing words, being misunderstood, and consequently making fools of themselves, so they think. Some are simply lacking experience. Of course, you need to have conversations to master conversational or, real life English. But there's also another very important part that most of the learners either miss or omit. And I have to admit, it's not the easiest one and it's also nothing new, but nonetheless, it is so important. And this is what helped me to basically learn not just theoretical English, but real life English. And I noticed that a lot of people started asking me about this on both of my channels, so I thought that I would make a dedicated video explaining this, although I have talked about this a lot, so sorry if some of you have heard me talking about this already. I'm talking about listening. I know, as I said, nothing new, but let me explain how I used listening to master conversational English just a little bit more in depth and with another perspective now that I'm actually here in the United States and have conversations with native speakers on a regular basis. So I realized this in the hindsight because at the time I was just doing what I felt like would help me. And listening, without a doubt, made the biggest difference in my fluency. It was also the most difficult part, but man, so worth the time and effort. And you might think that the most important thing would be speaking itself. And that is important. However, listening, meaning input, is so underestimated and overlooked. Listening is essentially that same exposure to the language. And I did this in my home country where nobody spoke any English around me. I dedicated countless amount of hours to listening and working on my listening skills in English. And yes, I admit it is not easy at all, and mostly because it is tiring for your brain to constantly be focused and try to decipher and comprehend what it's hearing, and then try to figure out whether it needs to memorize and store that information or not. But if you do this regularly, you'll notice that you understand more. You catch words you couldn't before, you remember a lot more, and you know a lot more. And now the thing of paramount importance. After being exposed to the language long enough, you start to notice the patterns of using the language. For example, which words and phrases to use in which contexts, and how to build sentences, and the rhythm and the melody of the language. And you don't even have to understand, you just know these things. As I already said earlier, I know it is very difficult to implement this. That's why people continue asking this question, which is how? Because they want to find something simpler. But in this case, I know for a fact that your time and effort will pay off. Believe me, it was difficult for me as well. When I faced this problem, to be more precise, the feeling that your brain is gonna leak through your ears because it is so overwhelmed, I try to kind of trick my brain. I knew that in order for my brain to be able to continue doing this, it needed to be interested and fully engaged. Therefore, in addition to watching my favorite shows and movies in English that I had already seen in my native language, I also started watching videos on YouTube about the things that I was fascinated and intrigued by or very curious about. So for instance, I had and still have some issues with my health, as we all do. And going to the doctors and getting incoherent diagnoses and hearing different things would really confuse me. So I would do my own research. I would watch medical videos on YouTube and to gather and compare information. And I would also watch videos of people sharing their experiences with the same things I was going through. And of course, I would watch them in English. sounds a little extreme because we're talking about medical talk and medical terms that I hadn't heard before in English, and I had to look up a lot of words and watch videos with subtitles. However, because I was so curious in both improving my English and figuring out what was going on with me, it did not seem that hard. It was more like a challenging but fun game. In addition, because I was so interested in learning all those things about my health, it was very easy to remember that medical vocabulary. I'm very much into skincare and hair care, so I watched everything about these things in English. I'm also very much into psychology, so I watched everything on this topic in English, and so on. And eventually, I came to the point where I could watch pretty much anything in English. To me, it was the same as listening to lectures and learning from them. Also, watching vlogs has made a big difference in the way I use the language, because I can see how regular people use English naturally in real life. My favorite YouTuber is Clancy Berg. I already mentioned her in one of my videos. She's just super real, open, and honest, and that's why she's my favorite. And of course, I just love the way she speaks. Now she's a former TV news reporter, so as you can imagine, her speech is fast but clear, and she's very knowledgeable because she probably needed to talk about everything. Nonetheless, and that's another thing that you'll notice, native speakers do make mistakes. They very often use some idioms incorrectly, admitting that they don't remember exactly how to say them. And all of these things are okay and normal. And that's what I mean when I say that Clancy is real, because she leaves all of these things in her vlogs, her making mistakes and sometimes not knowing how to say something. And it just makes you understand that you're definitely not alone. And it makes your fears regarding speaking English kind of go away. I've had and been part of countless conversations with native speakers already. And I don't just mean a 5-minute conversation about how we've been. I mean a whole discussion about everything. Of course I make mistakes and forget words and sometimes have to ask what something they said meant and all that jazz, but so do they. Even native speakers make grammar mistakes, and when they use incorrect words or idioms, someone else corrects them. Even native speakers say, "I don't know," or "I just lost my train of thought." It's normal, and they don't even pay attention to that. And we do the same things in our native languages, and we don't even notice this. They won't judge your English or think that you're stupid because your English isn't that good. Well, normal people won't, right? On the contrary, they will be more than happy to help you with whatever you're trying to say, even if they need to play charades a little bit with you. After some time, when you get used to listening in English, you don't need to be hyper-focused to understand at least something, because through some time, you can hear everything clearer. Even if you don't know the word, you can hear it and you can distinguish it from the others in that natural flowing speech. Anyways, after some time, you start to focus on the patterns and the natural usage of English. And then magic happens. You, all of a sudden, are able to utilize the received knowledge when in a conversation. All those things just pop up in your head. And then it's only a matter of speaking practice. But you have to understand that, yes, while practicing speaking is essentially the key to be able to speak in English, what you say, how you say that, and how you understand the other person, all these things are preparation. You can't go straight into a conversation in a foreign language without prior proper preparation. Well, that's a mouthful. I am more knowledgeable in some things than others, and I can be a better conversation partner on those topics, just like every one of us. We're all more knowledgeable in some things than others. Nonetheless, I'm gonna let you in on a huge secret. You can listen. Did you know that the best conversation partners are listeners? but you also need to be able to understand at least something, right? And ask questions. People love this when somebody is genuinely curious in what they have to say. And you might think that only moving to an English-speaking country like the United States will take care of this automatically, but believe me, it won't. What happens when you get into this environment unprepared? Well, first of all, you will hear just bits and pieces of conversations here and there, because it's not like you will stop next to other people just to hear them talk to each other. And the conversations that you have with people at the beginning are very basic, like, hey, how are you? Thanks, I'm good. Unless you make native speaking friends right away. And second, hearing people speak in real life is somewhat different than hearing them speak on TV. And you will need to do basically the same thing that I'm talking about, but just in a high alert state, so to speak. So you might just as well start this preparation process right now. And if you do, believe me, you'll thank me later. Okay, my friends, I've spilled the beans. So now tell me, do you choose to use my experience or ignore it? Let me know.